Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Vince Rocco in New York, so let's get right to what everyone is talking about. Today on the show, we are diving into one of the hottest debates in real estate, from the Big Apple to the magic city of Miami. Where is the smarter investment? New York City and Miami have always been two of America's most dynamic real estate markets, each offering its own version of luxury, lifestyle, and opportunity. But as migration patterns shift, taxes and climate play bigger roles, and buyers seek not just homes but lifestyles, investors are asking, where does the smart money go next? We'll unpack the contrast from pricing trends and property taxes to lifestyle demands, developer incentives, and market resilience. Whether you're an agent helping clients decide between a Manhattan penthouse or a Miami high-rise, or an investor weighing long-term potential, this conversation will give you a clearer picture of what each market has to truly offer. And on set with me today are Jared Anton from Brown Harris Stevens here in New York City and David Diza from Brown Harris Stevens in Miami. And they join me now to discuss, but first let me welcome my listeners and my viewers from across the United States and all around the globe. This is Talking New York Real Estate, so let's go behind the headlines and inside the state of our industry.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
I'm Brian Scott Cohen, one of the top loan originators in the country and the #1 mortgage originator at Guaranteed Rate Infinity. Guaranteed Rate Infinity arguably has the most advanced tech in the industry. Our completely digital loan process makes it easy and efficient for homeowners, from a 15-minute pre-approval to the digital application and through closing. My team and I would love to help you get into the home of your dreams.
Okay, everybody, we are back. So today, I'm really excited about this conversation because it really is the talk of the real estate industry, especially in the last several years. I'm going to say post-COVID, the last 5 years. Miami, 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 South Florida, South Florida, South Florida. You heard the stories about everybody running down to Florida during the COVID pandemic, running to the Hamptons, running all over the place outside of New York City. But slowly what I have seen from a customer perspective and just from an industry perspective is people starting to come back. And have been for years now. But I want to kind of undress the whole conversation, meaning what is the market like in Miami these days, in South Florida these days? What is the market like in New York City these days? How do we compare them? I read at the top of the show there's differences in luxury, how you define luxury, who wants water, who wants sun, who wants cold. I happen to be a cold person, so for me, that's what I'm doing. But Jared, let me start with you. So, how would you describe the current state of the New York City marketplace as of right now, today?
Yeah, so I think New York City right now today, or Manhattan in particular, is at a turning point. We're starting to see prices firm up. We're seeing these early signs of price appreciation. And what this is doing is creating a really good entry point for buyers. There was a report that was put out last week, showing how over the last 10 years, Manhattan prices really haven't moved. So what this creates right now is a great opportunity for buyers to be able to enter the market at prices that are, for all intents and purposes, roughly the same as they were 10 years ago, on the heels of nearly 3 years of above average stock market returns, with a decreasing interest rate environment, and with rising rents here in the city on the heels of the FAIR Act that went into effect earlier this year. So this creates a really good opportunity for buyers that have been stuck in the rental market for maybe longer than they wanted to be able to make that plunge into the sale market. And as David will talk about, it stands in contrast our market here, which moves a bit countercyclical to many of the national markets that saw such incredible appreciation in the days after the pandemic and are starting to now change course a little bit.
Just for clarification purposes, explain, you mentioned the FAIR Act.
Yeah.
What was that and how is that affecting things?
So the FAIR Act was something that went into effect in just New York City, and it was a legislative change by the city council here that basically stated that the party that's hiring the broker needs to pay the broker. Conventionally, for many, many years, because of the supply and demand effects of the New York City rental market, landlords were actually having their broker fee paid by the incoming tenant. And the FAIR Act very simply said that landlords must pay for their representation. So while this made it less expensive for a tenant to move into a new apartment, many landlords of free market apartments simply increase their monthly rent in order to account for this cost that the landlords must borne. So we saw rents go up 5, 8, in some cases 10% year over year, depending on what month we were looking at these statistics.
David, our new managing director in Miami. So let me ask you the same question. What would you describe as the current market, the current status of the Miami and or South Florida market these days?
Yeah, I love the visualization of everybody running to South Florida. And, there was some truth to it, and more now that we could look back 5 years it's been since the pandemic. It seems like it was yesterday. But it's a good measuring stick because we did see a huge surge of movement to South Florida. And it had a lot to do with the environment that we were, able to work and move and so on and so forth. Now, fast forward to today, what we're seeing right now is that we are seeing a leveling off in markets. Now, we do have a lot of more micro markets. And yet with that, when you divide the last 5 years, there's still that appreciation, but it's more steady. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things, because whenever something rises really large, there's always a concern of that pop, and there might be a big boom. And we're not going to see that. We don't see that.
What's driving buyer demand, in your opinion, these days in Miami? Lifestyle, taxes, weather, something else, all of the above? I mean, as I said at the top of the show, there are people who want to come, forget, the pandemic, but they want to come down south because they want the 1 or 2 season, aspect of weather. What's driving, you think, the buyers right now? I understand it's kind of like in flux at the moment, but what's driving them in general?
Yeah, everything you said was true. I mean, they're basic things, right? Taxes, we all know that. The weather, the lifestyle. But South Florida, and I enjoy the fact that we got out of Miami and expanding it to saying to South Florida. And it is, because it's not, back in the day, it might have been Miami and Broward and,
Correct.
Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach, but it's become one ecosystem. It is the environment, but more, I'm going to go a little further. It goes a little further than just the weather and the taxes. It is the place where entrepreneurs are going. And it is, where cash flows for entrepreneurs and allows them to move forward. We've had a lot of migrations from a lot of big companies. Now, you guys already have them here, and now we're getting them, from all the big names, from Apple to so on and so forth. And, we've had them all come down there, and they're setting up shop there. So they're seeing the same business opportunities, which attracts people. So it's the economical and financial environment that's become very interesting in South Florida. And more importantly, it's keeping a pace where we're not just a new thing, it's steady. And, now we could talk about Florida or Miami, South Florida 50 years ago. And it was just that up and down, that up and down, that up and down. And now we're starting to see a little bit more plateauing and leveling off, which is great. But like all our markets, New York's always been pretty steady, and it's a safe bet in some ways. South Florida had that speculation of how things work. But now we know that there is a grid of going up. You have that up and down, but there's that constant going up.
I mean, after, or during the COVID pandemic actually, let's go all the way back to 2008 and 2009 financial crisis. And we all know what happened in South Florida, okay? First of all, the new condo build was out of control. The new rental build was out of control. I mean, faster than I've seen it ever here, even in New York City. The financial crisis hit, and it almost became a ghost town. And it took, in my opinion, and please correct me if I'm wrong, a decade or more to start to really come back, okay? But then it did come back, and it came back really strong. And then we had the COVID pandemic, and for all the reasons you just talked about, people started migrating there. How do people feel in South Florida right now, in Miami right now, about maybe returning to those days of post-2008, 2009 financial crisis? I mean, I hear whispers of people saying, I hope we don't get back to those days. Will we?
Right. It's a natural concern, but the difference is lending has changed completely. So we're a lot more sound lending. We're also very cash heavy. So we do get a lot of foreign nationals that come in money, and also certain price points that come in with cash. So that's a big one. Number two, the big one that we all saw was the reform when it comes to lending. There's a lot of equity in these walls. So that conversation is something to have. We were around. We saw how that happened. I mean, everywhere is an impact. But in South Florida, we don't have that anymore, and I don't think nationally we don't have that anymore. So that conversation, is not something that's so worrisome.
Where are your greatest buyers coming from? When I'm teaching foreign investors, buyers, or whatever in continuing ed, we talk about, Canadians wanting to go south, Canadians wanting to buy in Florida, for obvious reasons. It's freezing cold in Canada. It's very warm in Miami. Is Canada the biggest pool of buyers in your state these days, or is it kind of a mix of anywhere?
Yeah, they've always been great buyers. I would say the last 6 months, it has not been. And we're going to see this winter and see what happens. And it could be,
We're
whatever
predicting
reasons.
a mild winter again this year, so who knows?
Yeah,
but I don't know
right.
about Canada, but at least here in the U.S.
Now, the surprise has been countries like Mexico. So Mexico wasn't something that really invested in South Florida. They always go Texas west, and they're coming in. We've seen a lot of money from there. We've seen, the constant places that we normally see, California, up here, the Northeast. It's always that kind of money, and we're seeing a lot of movement within Florida as well. So those that had already been in South Florida a long time are now cashing out and moving to Central Florida. And you got a lot of people in Central Florida now moving down here. Also, the fact of lifestyle. So if you are remote, a lot of people are catching themselves going to South Florida and benefiting from the benefits of making New York money. So we're seeing a lot of that.
Jared, you write a lot of articles on real estate, clearly, and they're all really pretty good. But where are you seeing in the New York City marketplace buyer demand coming from? Again, is it lifestyle? Is it the weather? Is it taxes? Is it something else, or all of the above? I mean, compare and contrast to what David just said about what seems to be going on in the Miami area.
Yeah, so New York City is a special place, right? There's energy here
Very special.
that is unmatched, and it's a special kind of breed of person that thrives off living here, right? And we all know New York City is not for everyone, and that's part of the reason why it is so transient. A lot of people come in, a lot of people leave, and there's multiple reasons why people want to be in New York. You have people that love the arts, the culture, the constant something to do, the nightlife, and they're maybe young professionals and they're making a home here, or they love to be able to raise their kids for that sense of community, or you have people that want to own a piece of New York as a pied-à-terre, or because it's a status symbol from a global wealth standpoint, and there's a lot of international buyers. So New York benefits from the fact that it is a cultural icon of the world, a financial capital of the world, and an enduring symbol of status. So we get people from all across the world. We've seen a lot of people with the weakened dollar decide that now is a great time to invest here. And we've seen a lot of local people say, you know what, this is a great time to be able to capitalize because, again, comparatively speaking, with Manhattan prices not really having moved much over the last number of years, it's a good entry point.
And we are the greatest melting pot in the world here. So bringing people from, or people wanting to come from any other country, around the world and feeling comfortable here makes sense. But David, kind of add to that with what are investors seeing, in the Miami marketplace that is really resonating with them? Do they feel like it's a secure investment these days based on the past? Or are they just kind of saying, well, I don't know. I think it's not a bad choice because the weather is great, but is it really a stable, good investment these days?
Right. I love you say the weather because that was part of it, right? So I moved down back in the day and so on and so forth. But I'm going to piggyback right off what Jared said.
I think it starts with the weather, but then I think it kind of changes to everything else, which is a good thing.
Yeah, well, I love it because weather, we're talking about the climate, right? The whole climate and the financial climate is changed. So it was again, I use the word speculation. It was a speculation before, but now it is everything that Jared was saying is that the weakened dollar, people buying South Florida, we are a melting pot. It is a attractor now and has become a foundation of a lot of large companies that come down here. There is that luxury feel to it too now, which as we've seen it from prices of homes and prices of property and the demand for waterfront and so on and so forth. So that culture has the environmental, the not just the environment, but the financial environment around it has now solidified that we've seen this trend that it is a solid investment in South Florida.
I want to talk a little bit about luxury and how we define luxury, and I've got a show coming up in the next couple of weeks. We're going to talk and break down that term luxury. But Jared, in your mind and from what you hear from your agents, et cetera, in the industry here in New York, how are we defining luxury today?
So there's a couple different ways, but before that, let's not forget that New York City is now a subtropical climate. I believe it was reclassified recently, so it is getting milder, the heat dome. But luxury. So luxury is commonly defined by market reports in our area as being above 4 million. Another definition is the top 10% of sales, and another definition is you see it or you know it when you see it, right? Maybe it's not. A price point. So I think luxury to some extent is in the eye of the beholder. when I'm writing my market reports, I'm generally defining sort of that luxury market as being 4 million plus, with then a separate divide at 10 million and up, as well.
I've always considered it, even when we say or see, 4 million and up and 5 million and up, I always have said, I think it's more like a 10 million and up. All cash deals, I mean, that could be at any price point,
Right.
so that doesn't really necessarily fly. What about you, David? How do you define, or how does Miami define the term luxury?
I define it the same way. So it really is a lifestyle, so on and so forth. Our number has been 2 million, so 2 million and up.
2 million and up.
2 million up, we will consider. It's
You can
interesting.
still find something for 2 million?
You can find a lot of stuff for 2 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You coming down?
No.
Second home.
I'll
Second
come
home.
and visit. Second home, absolutely, definitely.
There you go.
What types of properties are performing better? We talk about all kinds of price points. We talk about what luxury is, what luxury isn't. But what kind of properties are performing better in your territory? Is it private homes? Is it high rises? Is it older buildings? Is it newer buildings?
No.
What are people finding more attractive when they consider, from wherever they're coming from, hey, I think I'm going to move to Miami. Hey, I think I'm going to go to Florida. What are they looking at?
Yeah. So
I mean, when
interesting.
I think of Florida, okay, because I come from a city of buildings, I think of a private home on the water somewhere where I can walk out and touch the sand with my feet and go in the water like from here to there.
And park your yacht.
And well, yeah, from your lips to God's ear. But
love
what
the
do you?
visualization, yeah.
What is it?
Yeah, you're true. The waterfront's always in demand.
Right.
It's been one thing, but we're out starting to see now the inner city, and there's places of culture like Wynwood, Brickell, if you guys have heard.
Brickell, of course, very
and
big
always in
news
demand.
these days. Why?
It is.
Tell me why. I
Well,
was going to ask you that later.
I was going to go. Well, it's a financial district. It does pull in the younger money. It does have a footprint kind of look to New York, right?
It's getting walkable. There's stuff to do. Lots of restaurants and bars.
There you go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
We have an infrastructure.
But
yeah.
I wanted you to explain that because he's right. I mean, it's walkable. You can do a lot of things. It is very young, and a lot of my younger friends who are participating in real estate in Miami, that's all they talk about is Brickell.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. I don't think I've ever been there, but what is the driving, force there?
Restaurants. There's the things to do. You have access to water. You're in the middle of everything. So downtown wasn't our downtown. Really wasn't a downtown until probably 20 years ago.
Right.
Now we have a Brickell City Center, which is right in the middle of it, and it has all this culture around it, from high-end top restaurants, Michelin starred, and so on and so forth. But I think the biggest stories and the opportunities are when you go a little more inland, and there's places like Wynwood, Coral Gables, Coconut Grove is still hugely high demand. There's low inventory there. Why? Because the demand is 3-4 bedrooms. And 3-4 bedrooms is not everywhere. So you're starting to see those in areas like Pinecrest and South Miami, areas that are percolating now because you get a lot of space in the $2 million range.
Right.
But when you go to the condo, what's $2 million buy you? Well, it depends on also other cost factors. Our HOAs are higher. Things you guys don't talk about here probably as much as we do when it comes to insurance.
Insurance is ridiculous.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
here, but more by you.
But it offsets with no state tax. So you start having that little off. So things in demand that people look for is also structure. Our homes are built a little different. We got concrete roofs now that have become a big thing, which is always crazy to me to have that concrete roof because it's an expensive thing to do. Buildings with their 40-year certification now. Our governor has been great because he's allowed to kind of push over because we had a building that collapsed. I don't know if you guys heard about that, and it was just
Indeed.
because of unfortunately that happened. But the benefit of it is that it focused on what we needed to do with a lot of these older buildings. I lived in these older buildings. The good thing is that they're working with the community. They're working with the associations. They're working with the homeowners to make sure they're not put out. So there is an opportunity with condos. There's an opportunity with the new condos. We have a lot of luxury brand condominiums that people love to go to. The Baccarat, Porsche, so on and so forth. People do buy brand names. So we're starting to go in with that brings in the international and the national, obviously, but the international wealthy that want to have those amenities.
I want to live close to Joe's Stone Crab.
Yeah, there's definitely more.
Okay, so I got to pause on there. Our BHS office is literally a block.
Okay,
from
when I
there.
come and visit,
We're going to go.
Joe's Stone Crab for
100%.
lunch. That's my favorite place in all of Miami.
Let's stick on the branded residence though for a minute because I think it speaks to sort of the flash that Miami has and sort of the status symbols that are much more attached to brands on the generals, than New York City because branded residences have not really taken hold in New York. Yes, we have one Baccarat. Yes, there's a couple Four Seasons, but from all the other brand partnerships, we don't see them here, but they're everywhere in Miami, just as they're everywhere through Dubai or other areas of the Middle East. So it's very interesting to see how brand conscious Miami is, a bit more from a residential tie-in than Manhattan is.
I agree.
Well, there's a big demand also on wellness. So the whole lifestyle of wellness has become a huge thing, and all our buildings are. So let me go pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, you probably might have had this. All the new developments were looking for filtration systems and so on and so forth. And that was a big deal. We have storms. We haven't had a storm in a long time, but we got a lot of storms. So having a building be self-sufficient is a big one. But wellness is the newest thing. So having amenities for dogs and having things for our dogs and so on and so forth is a big deal for us because we have a lot of outdoor space. But also cold plunges and so on and so forth. Whatever it is that we do, pickleball.
Cold plunges.
Yeah.
Topic of the year, man.
Well, it's always a cold plunge here, right?
Degrees outside.
It's about to be a cold plunge starting next month for you guys, right?
Oh, they do it in the winter. Exactly.
Yeah,
That's the polar plunge.
Well, that's for us. Yeah, for us is that cold plunge, just the cold wind you guys get.
Okay, I just find it amusing when I'm all over social media when I say who's one cold plunge after the next. I'm like, okay, we'll think about it. We will think about it. On that note, we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. Talking New York Real Estate is just getting underway on this very busy day. We will be back right after these messages.
Residential and commercial closings to litigation, Romer DeBoss is your full-service real estate law firm. We blend big firm knowledge with boutique-level attention, delivering outcomes that exceed every expectation. Contact us at romerdeboss.com.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
Okay, we're going to go right to it. So, in your opinion, Jared, what properties are performing better here in New York? Are we talking? Well, we don't really talk about private homes unless we're talking about Brooklyn or Queens, but it's still part of New York City. Is it the new condo developments? Is it the older buildings? What property is driving people more here to New York than not?
So I think
I think it's changed, but I want your impression on that.
Yeah, I think it's less about a property type and more about sort of the renovation, configuration, or usability of the space. As I've been talking about extensively, turnkey, beautifully renovated, properly proportioned homes are going to trade better right now. Outdoor space is still in demand in our city. Our issue comes down to a bit more around location, comes down to carry cost. Some buildings obviously have higher carrying costs than others. And, the higher the carrying cost, the lower the price. There is an inverse relationship between carry and the price that something's going to sell. So we see that effect. Townhouses continue to do well here because A, they're scarce, there's a limited supply, and there's a premium for having that privacy and accessibility for them. New development continues to do its thing here. New development continues to push higher and higher price per square foot, in part because it's a better way for developers to make a profit. It's a little bit more economical to build larger properties, and in part because the cost of acquiring a developable site has gotten that much higher. The economics just don't make sense to build anything but high end. So we are continuing to see new developments here, although new developments are trending a little bit more on the smaller size. We're seeing more developments come in under about 99 units and fewer over that. And there's a little bit of a slowdown in the new development pipeline that's coming ahead before we see another boom on the horizon.
People say to me all the time, because I spent 15 years or 16 years selling brand new developments with Mr. Kligerman over there, they say to me, when does it end? Because it just seems like there is, no more room. There's no more property. There's no more land. How many buildings can be converted, et cetera, et cetera? When does it end? And my response always is, it's not going to end. It's going to keep going.
Right.
What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, there is a finite amount of land in New York City and certainly in Manhattan, which is an island. But you look at what you can redevelop. I mean, there are still plenty of developable parcels, either buildings that are not built to their highest functional use or ones that are, sort of declining or in disrepair. And there's a few sites that are literally sitting vacant, trying to figure out what needs to happen. I mean, one of the sites, and this was one of the casino proposals, but there's a huge vacant site all east of First Avenue, just south of the UN. That thing has been vacant for as long as I can remember, and probably even longer than that. So there are still parcels to be developed. We saw what was created in Hudson Yards. It was created over one half of the rail yards. And phase 2 is way beyond, schedule. It was supposed to have been done around the time that COVID came, and that pushed it off. And that site is still yet to be fully developed as well. So there is still room.
Let me ask you something, because you mentioned it. I was not going to touch on it, but because it's such a hot button with me, I don't really even know where I land with this, but you mentioned casino. What is your, intelligent thought or comment on New York City now being the home or the start of more casinos in this country? Do we need it?
Well,
No.
I think it's good that none of them actually passed in Manhattan. I think if there was one in Times Square, it would have made locals avoid that area even more than they already do, and it would have created an incredible circus, and that's sort of not
Circus
really,
is the word.
Yes, it would have been a big circus there. Also, having one just south of the UN, I don't know what that would do for that area. So I don't know that one necessarily is correct in Manhattan, and it seems that the local boards here have voted that down. There is still one on the table in Yonkers, which would not necessarily be a terrible thing to redevelop that Empire City and build some necessary sort of transit infrastructure upgrades over there. And as well, one out in Queens and towards Long Island. So personally, I'm happy that there's not one, in Manhattan, although it certainly would have redeveloped and brought a lot of other stuff here. But I don't know that we wanted all that other stuff that would have come with it.
I don't think we need it. I grew up in Yonkers, and I remember the Yonkers Raceway, horse racing, and that was the big highlight of, my years growing up. But a casino, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
Casinos in Miami.
All
talk
my
about.
life, it's been a conversation. It's always been passed down. The beauty of it is every time people get excited, for those that get excited about it, they put money into the city and create better, more infrastructure. So it's been awesome. I don't think we're going to have it. I mean, we literally could go to the Bahamas.
Yeah.
We do have Indian territory, just like probably you guys do. And we have the Hard Rock and all that kind of stuff. But not a Vegas or anything like that. It's not going to be us. I mean, there's always conversations of what if Cube opened up and that could be this and that could be that, right? It could be a lot of fun. I don't see it in Miami. We have too many other things that are growing. We have opportunity, space.
Right.
It's interesting with us, when you guys said about an island, I was thinking about that. We're a peninsula, but yet in many ways, Miami and Broward and so on and so forth, we're an island because we're caught between the Everglades. So you got the Everglades, you're not going to build out there as much as they want to. It's going to, it's not something we could do. And then we have the ocean on the other side. But when you do comparison, and my flight back and forth is, opportunity. When I fly into Manhattan and New York, I go, man, look at, we have opportunity. You guys are doing it at a great level, and there's everywhere. There's space for us.
Well, I wanted to get into that a little bit because, we talk about culture, and New York City is the greatest, in my opinion, one of the greatest cultural melting pots in the world. I mean, aside from a lot of other things we got going on here. Yeah. But from a culture perspective, and because we're a melting pot, we've got everything and anything. How do you define culture in Miami and in South Florida? Yeah. Is it important for people when they're seeking a second home or a primary home? Are they doing it because they feel like the culture is comparable to New York?
Right.
Because let's face it, most people who want to move to South Florida or anywhere in the South are coming from New York,
right,
for the most part.
Yep.
How does culture kind of fit in the whole equation?
Vince, I got to start with the fact that who built Miami? I mean, it's the Northeasterners built a lot of Miami.
It is the sixth borough.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Well said, yeah.
But you're right.
So the things that we've learned here, we're building them down there. Culture is important. We all want to be in an area. So the beautiful thing with the opportunity with South Florida, what I've seen over the last 40 years is that we're building areas. We've built areas. We didn't have culture like you guys had. But now we have an art district. We have, we have, what's that called? The Art Basel. which is a big thing. We got a boat show. I can't believe I forgot about that. We have so much stuff when it comes to culture. And of course, you guys are a lot larger. We have a melting pot. Obviously, it's, European, South American, Caribbean heavy, and so on and so forth. But when people do think about moving to the States, besides New York, they're thinking Miami now as well.
Outside of New Yorkers, being predominantly the people coming down there.
Yeah.
What about South America? You just mentioned it before. Huge, right?
Opportunities.
And from where?
So it depends. So the beautiful thing us as agents always have to find out where is it coming from, right? There's always a market. So the beautiful thing, just like you guys, I assume, is that we watch the outside market. So U.S. is still the best bet, when it comes to putting in your money, and it comes into real estate for the most part. So in South Florida, Colombians, Venezuelans, recently Argentinians, like I said, I mentioned Mexicans. We're seeing a lot of those always. Why? Because they're a big population. Brazil. So whenever we see instability of political or environmental or anything like that, we watch, we build, and they come to South Florida. And the attraction, remember about those designer buildings, they're familiar with those names.
Right. There's a comfortability.
Attracts, yes.
And they're all cash.
And most of them, I would say, I think the number was 77% of foreigners are coming in with cash.
Right.
And it's because that's their lifestyle. There is no, the infrastructure for financing usually is at minimum 50% down or 100% down. So
and they're buying because lifestyle and because it gives them an escape, but it also gives them a hedge on their finances. So they're parking that money there, which also I think is a different distinction to the investment strategy or style now in Miami compared to what it was before the Great Recession. Then it was speculative, primarily domestic driven, highly leveraged with unsustainable loans. So the second that first card fell, it all crumbled. If the same thing were to happen, you wouldn't see it unwind nearly as fast or as dramatically because the people that have put, all cash there are not going to just necessarily pull it out. So you don't have that same sort of highly leveraged house of cards.
Right.
Correct. So from a cultural perspective, is that still like a predominant thought here in New York? Is it something that's a nice thing to have, or is it other reasons why somebody really wants to come here from an investment perspective, but also from from one of the burbs, one of our suburbs here? You want to move to the city because you want X. Talk a little bit, Jared, about the schools and how people had, for some reason, moved, for lots of reasons rather, moved into the suburbs for schools for their children versus putting them in schools here in New York City. What's the driving force for when people want to do the reverse and come here, even with children?
Yeah. So, obviously the New York City suburbs have, some incredible school districts. And while you're going to pay higher property taxes in the suburbs than you will in New York City, for many people, the public schools there are perfectly good enough that they don't feel the need to pay for private schools. So that's the offset to what they may have felt like they needed to pay in the city. It's been sort of that age-old adage that, you rent, you buy in the city, then you have a kid or two, and then you're like, we got to decamp for more space in the suburbs. That has been sort of a traditional process for many people. Not everyone, but, having grown up and now live in the suburbs, many of the friends that we have now have all come through a similar sort of trajectory. But you're also seeing people now that are becoming empty nesters, their kids are going to college, and they're choosing to be able to buy a pied-à-terre in the city and want to be able to enjoy that. We're also seeing people that may have been lifelong New Yorkers, never suburban people that did move out during the pandemic, and they may have moved a little bit further because they got more for their money. And now with the employment or with employers trying to ramp up an RTO or a 4 to 5 day in office compared to a 2 to 3, it may make some of those hour and a half, 2 hour commutes that people could do a few days a week a little less palatable. So we are seeing some more demand now for people looking to buy large 1-bedrooms, maybe 2-bedroom properties closer to the employment center, because this way they can hang their hat there for, a night, 2 nights, 3 nights during the week, cut down on the commute, and this way they're not uprooting the family.
Go ahead.
No, so there's so many different reasons why people are going to be buying in the city, and we're also seeing a generation that may be also nearing retirement or empty nesters who have bought a second home in South Florida. It has been this generational pull back to my grandparents who moved down there, and my parents now wanted to take after it. So you've seen a lot of people that have had houses in the suburbs around New York take, HELOCs or different sort of equity out or refi at very, very low rates during the early days of the pandemic and use that cash to be able to buy in South Florida. And this is part of the reason that you're seeing the suburbs around New York still doing so incredibly well, is because they're supply starved. No one is selling. We still have a lot of demand, but no one is selling. So it moved the market from being demand driven to supply constrained. And because these people took out this loan to be able to buy a second property, it's arguably more expensive for them to sell what they still hold, in the New York suburbs than it is for them to get rid of it.
So talk about remote work, okay? Does that drive people to move to your location? Does it keep people in the suburbs, even though you say some people, empty nesters especially, wanting to come back to maybe where they began or maybe down to Florida to buy a second home, whatever? Remote work, in my opinion, wreaked havoc on a lot of insurance industries in this country, most especially the New York and Miami or South Florida relationship. How is remote work still affecting your territory?
So, as we're having this conversation in New York, it's not New York versus Miami or Northeast versus Miami or South Florida. It's a conjunction. It's with and. It's the and in it.
Right.
And here's the reasons why. You were talking about schools earlier. We grew the other way around. I mean, we're a lot, younger city, 100, 150 years at least, younger. Names like Tom Brady, for example, guy from the Northeast and so on and so forth, comes down there and made one of the schools that's been around there for a while, put a lot of money into it, Lionel Messi, so on and so forth. So our schools, we went the other way. It's more the private schools that were built with the money from those that wanted to see more. And so we have a ton of those that become a great thing. So my son goes to a private school, Columbus High School, which now, brought in a lot of national players and so on and so forth. But we did see a whole shift of people working remotely in South Florida. And during that time, a lot of people went down there just to check it out because they wanted to enjoy it. It was a temporary thing. But the financial district has seen it. Hospitality, obviously, we know those are the I don't say 9-to-5ers, but those are the ones coming into a brick and mortar and working. But we do have a lot of people that work there, but yet are earning their home base or their company is here, but they're living there.
How has remote work really affected our market 5 years later?
Well, there's a divide.
Our market being New York.
You have, some large legacy companies that are really trying to do everything in their power to be able to get people back to the office, right? This is across the large banks, law firms, even some of the larger tech companies here want people back. And, there's another generation of startups or younger companies that have been built in this remote first sort of environment. And quite frankly, I don't see those companies going into a brick and mortar setup. So there's sort of this divide where I think from a scrappy startup environment, those entrepreneurs understand that you can save an incredible expense that is office space and you can broaden your talent pool. So I don't see remote work going away in the ecosystem, but I do see sort of a larger divide occurring where this sort of hybrid may start to disappear a little bit more. And I've talked about this a lot too, what a mild recession could do. If the labor market starts weakening further than we're seeing just from a reduction in job creation, does that then shift the balance back between or from employees back to employers? Does that move us back, to a 5-day a week? And what does that do to bring people back to employment centers like New York? So I don't think all remote work is going away. And truthfully, a recession could even create other type of remote work for other companies realizing, how do I keep my business afloat? Maybe I don't need the office space. Let's go remote. But I think the large employers, right, in employment centers are going to try to bring people back because they've invested so much money in that physical space and they want it to be able to use and they believe.
Brick and mortar is not cheap,
right?
So they've got to pay
Vince,
for
I want
that.
to add, because you're right. I mean, it's already getting built in ROI of our business. The interesting with South Florida is that we are still first generational for the most part. So it's a mindset of the person outside the U.S. that usually thinks that entrepreneur type mentality. We're going to build something. Here's our shop or business, or we're service industry, which we are very service industry, related. And they're coming in and going with that mindset of, I don't work for someone else. I work for my own. So for example, even in our industry, there's a lot of shops and they're trying to figure it out. Obviously they're learning that here it's a little tougher, but in South Florida, we do have a lot of entrepreneurs that have startups and they're in their first year. It's that first generation. It's that mindset that's a little different.
Why? Are there a lot more entrepreneurs in your territory in South Florida?
I think culture, population, people coming in have a different mindset from outside other
Do they
countries.
think they're going to do better in Miami than they're going to do
It's the American
anywhere
dream, right?
Well, it is, but I mean, is it cost effective? More cost effective? Is that driving it really?
I think it's the education also, learning of how to use the systems in the United States, how things work. It's that mindset of, let me protect what I have, mattress, money under the mattress type of thing, because I don't know the institution. That's why a lot of our agents are pairing up with financial advisors, tax consultants when they talk to these people bringing in the money, because there is a concern of that. It's learning the system here. So it's still that first generation, even though we've been a little bit around.
Yeah.
Like my kids are second generation and so on and so forth, but it's still that first generation mentality coming down. So it's interesting watching that when you're talking to these buyers and future sellers, but mainly the buyers coming in, they're coming a little more like, hey, as long as my money's safe and I put in a couple $1 million, this is great. I want to do this, and not asking the question, what happens when I sell? The capital gains or 1031s and all that kind of stuff. That is new to them. That's a conversation. That's where we hold the value to our clients. And that's why our clients turn to be lifelong clients, because it is the first time they're introduced to our system.
All right, we have one more block to go. We got to take a quick break. We're coming right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, I'm Dylan Pachulik, CEO of XL Real Property Management, New York's most trusted name in luxury property management since 2012. We specialize in managing individual apartments, townhouses, and rental buildings held by absentee owners. We maintain our properties with the highest standards of quality and service so that owners can choose a hassle-free approach to real estate investing. Rented or owner-occupied, we handle it all. For more information, contact us at xl-rpm.com.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
Okay. Let's talk numbers, okay? So we talked about at the top of the show, I mentioned at the top of the show, people who are trying to decide between magical Miami and, tried and true New York City, where is the better money spent, okay? So, Jared, let me start with you on this one. When we talk numbers, we're talking about, taxes, insurance costs have skyrocketed, maintenance fees in co-ops and condos have skyrocketed. When people are looking to invest here as an investor or looking here to buy as, primary residence, they're obviously looking at the cost. And I hear all the time from buyers that I'm working with, or even when I have listings and buyers coming to me, wow, these costs are out of control lately. Everybody is concerned about monthly cost. What says you?
Well, I think both markets make a good buy. Why pick one when you can pick both? But they serve different purposes or different goals, right? So obviously I'm coming from the Northeast, New York mentality, born and raised here. To me, you look at Florida as a great place to be able to decamp in the winter or to be able to diversify. So, for me personally, I would be looking to be able to buy something that needs a little less upkeep, so a connected, unit, not necessarily a single family. So a villa or, a condo would be good. But I think you have to look at sort of what is happening from a macroeconomic standpoint, a price standpoint. There was a lot of speculative buying because prices were running up really, really quick in Miami. And you're seeing some of those buyers that got in looking to get out. And that's why you're starting to see, and it's not unique to Miami or South Florida. It's across much of Florida, Texas, and through much of the parts of the country that had more affordable prices, going into the pandemic, where you're starting to see this rebalance. So it doesn't mean that it's not a good time to buy in Miami. It just means you need to be smart about what you're buying and have a long enough holding period to be able to see through the sort of rebalance, right? In New York, we went through this rebalance. We had that boom time that Miami had between 2012 and 2016 when prices were going up 20 to 25% a year, and that's not sustainable.
No.
And neither is prices dropping, neither is the fact that prices don't move. So usually you see some upward, growth in prices. So for me, New York City creates this opportune time where, we're at that precipice of that next cycle. And Florida, I think, also has value My only one slight hesitation with South Florida right now is I see as a pull forward of demand, meaning that the pandemic pulled forward 3 to 6 years of future buyer demand that would be ready to either retire down there or to buy that second home down there. They use the low interest rates, they use the remote work, they use the pandemic as sort of this pull forward of a demand. So you may have this natural market cycle, and this is not unhealthy, where you have less demand just because of that pull forward effect, and that's going to create a little bit more supply as some people have changing needs. Maybe their employer has been pulling them back. Maybe they don't have that same flexibility from remote work and they can't get the same use out of it. But Miami, as David said, has had an influx of foreign buyers that have pulled or filled, I should say, some of that gap of that pull forward demand. But in another, let's call it 2 to 4 years, I think you're going to have a resurgence of that demand down there again, just based upon that natural life cycle, projecting out where we think interest rates will be. So it can be a good time if you can get a good deal down there. And there are some sellers that are motivated to sell. So you can get a good deal. You just have to be a little bit more smart about it.
David, do you hear the same thing that we hear here in New York? I'm sure you do. You know, the economy right now is just so-so. Inflation seems to be climbing again. The cost of, kitchen table goods are through the roof. I mean, I went to the grocery store the other day to buy the typical brand of coffee I buy all the time, and it was $23.99. I put that thing down so hard and said, F this. Incredible to me. So when we're talking numbers in the South Florida marketplace, first-time buyers especially, or second home buyers, they want to keep those costs down. Insurance down there is just as high as it is here, if not higher. The maintenance cost in co-ops and condos, same thing. What are people, how are they digesting these high costs?
So we're all in this together, right? We're all seeing this, and there's besides speculation, we're confidence right now with what I put my money is important. So the offsets and the question, I'll answer that in a second. I think one of the biggest things, and I wanted to add to what Jerry said, is that it lies on us. We got to ask more questions. Really, the buyer or the seller, specifically the buyer, just getting to know what their needs are, asking them, finding out what their real, ROI interest is. If it is my forever home, the ROI is going to be, the ROI conversation is a little different than my investment property.
Right.
So what we've done when it comes to cost, because yes, insurance is a cost. And like I mentioned earlier, is that they're adjusting to it. So we're looking at more elevated areas, or we're building our buildings different. Our material, how we build our homes are different. And, all those things are offsetting costs. Why? Because, who's going to insure a wooden frame home, which we don't have? It's all, brick. There was a time when I lived in South Florida where everything on the first floor was brick and the second floor was wood. And it was okay. Then we had a thing called Hurricane Andrew. I'm dating myself here. But we learned quickly that we got to build a little differently. We have the keys, which we learn a lot from there too, because there's always storm surge and king tides and all that kind of stuff. So it's adapting to the environment, which is offsetting the cost. Also, making the environment of insurance, this is a whole other conversation, open up that marketplace a little more. So South Florida has been, or Florida itself has seen either hurricanes from the West Coast or the East Coast, so on and so forth. We have not seen in our metro area in a long time, and hopefully, knock on wood, we won't see it for a long time. But when we do, at least we'll be prepared, because the cost comes from the after effect. So as long as the after effect is still, the structure is still there, and we're moving forward and doing better in how to be resilient to these storms, which we are, we're going to see costs that shouldn't skyrocket. The problem is that these storms have been hitting certain areas in Florida that have been costly to rebuild.
Yeah, Mother Nature is not an easy thing to control. But, I always say the elephant in the room the last two plus years is the interest rate drama.
I agree.
So, we hear so much of it here, especially when you're talking first-time buyers.
Yeah.
A lot of people who buy in Florida, second homes, pied-à-terres, maybe a summer home, a winter home rather, whatever. Are they as concerned about interest rates these days being wherever they are? Or does that not matter? Is it more cash buying down there, or is it, a little
We do
both?
have 44%, I think, cash when those foreign investors come in.
44%?
Yeah, 40% of the cash of those foreign investors come in with cash.
Okay.
It is a conversation. And it's our job to, because honestly, overall, when we look at rates in the last, 30 years or, it's still great rates.
Yeah. Oh, I've been saying forever, 6.5% is an incredible rate.
Bought my first place, I think it was 12.99. I think it was something like that, yeah. And running to the bank happy.
Bingo. That's exactly what mine was, 12.9.
But the prices
and
will
I
have to
thought
adjust.
I robbed the bank. because it was up to 17 at one point.
with a prepay, and it was a balloon, and you're like, I'm
My
running.
father said, "Do it."
That's what I got. I got the same thing. Just make it happen. Because we talked about monthly payments, right? It wasn't about the sales price. It's all ultimately about the monthly
But that's
payment.
the point. Yeah, right.
Working backwards. So it is a concern. It's always a concern for the first-time home buyer. It's that I think it's the younger generations having a hard time right now. They're coming in, buying their starter home or their first investment. You know, we're seeing a lot of not the nuclear family as much, but more the extended family coming in and saying, okay, grandma and grandpa are going to help with some cash and say, here,
When
give a
you
bigger
say
down
the
payment.
younger buyer is having more of an issue, and I absolutely 100%
Yeah.
agree with that, and
Yeah.
Jared and I can probably give you many examples here in New York. But you know, because is it really they're having a harder time understanding, you know, why the rate is 6.5, just to use a number right now, versus what it used to be 3% and 4%, or are they just kind of like, well, I wanted to go back to 3.4%, and I'll just wait until it happens?
Okay, Dorothy.
Yeah, snap them twice.
I mean, what's
But also
what's
their
the
demand.
constant?
Their demand and what they want is different too. So, for example, we mentioned Brickell earlier. They love that because it is a different type of environment. So they're happy with the building giving certain amenities where when, for example, the buyer maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago wanted the backyard and wanted the barbecue space and so on and so forth. During COVID, everybody was building on their homes
Well,
and,
right, exactly.
and wanted those things. But they're coming in. Why? Because they're adapting to possibly a younger lifestyle and living in the Northeast and going, hey, this is what I want. So we have that area in Brickell that does that, but we have a lot of sub areas that just kind of fill those voids. So is it a conversation? 100%. Are they sitting around and waiting? Some are. Some are kind of, hey, I'm okay with paying the rent because our rent was out of reach and now it's starting to become highly competitive, which is good.
What's driving the change in the rental market there?
Building opportunities. So a lot of buildings went online, so that's given it. And I think people just okay with moving out of certain areas. So you don't south of Fifth, your price per square footage is a lot more than obviously if you go, west of 95. So if you go west of 95, there are a lot of opportunities. Found Blue, Doral, certain areas that probably weren't spoken about before. But going okay, but it fills my needs of what I want, and I'm still drivable to what I need to go.
Are you seeing a lot of the investors, like we talked about before, the foreign nationals coming in and buying? Are they then renting them out, or are they so you see a lot of condo rental inventory come on?
We do get a lot of that.
Okay,
we do. We've always gotten it since the 80s that I know of, and we still get it. So a lot of the buildings you'll see. There was a time I got to share the story. Is that in the 90s it was more or less we had another crisis more or less, and a lot of the people from foreigners, Colombia, so on and so forth, that bought. And these lights were off in these buildings. You would drive down Brickell, you had a lot of buildings like half off.
Right.
And like literally someone genius, I don't know who it was, I want to give them credit, said, you know what? Why don't you just have maintenance turn on the lights? So it doesn't look that bad.
Right.
And it was a thing. Yeah.
So I got one more question for you. So if I'm a tenant, right, and I want to rent in a condo down there, who's paying the broker fee? Am I or is the landlord paying?
I was just going to ask that question. You got it.
Yeah, it's up for look, it's always been traditional, but it is more of a negotiation today.
Okay.
So it lies on us on having that conversation up front, obviously with that agreement, especially on rentals. And then we also have a lot of buildings where, you're safe. So as long as you have that building, you brought in that client. So those are getting more traffic than before, and they're paying a lot better to the agent versus hey, let me give you a couple bucks and you're kind of out of it or whatever it is. Yeah, it's a great conversation.
No, I was going to ask you that same question because apparently the FAR Act, whatever it's called, has not really kind of migrated down to the South Florida neighborhood yet.
Right.
Because we've got all kinds of issues up here, including, buyer, agent agreements on the sales side, whatever, based on that lawsuit out in the Midwest. But Jared, you and I, at the end of last year, for the most of last year, predicted, you did, and I agreed with you 1,000%, that by March or April of this year, 2025, the interest rates would start really kind of coming down to a point where it would elevate interest in buying again here in New York City. We missed that target a little bit.
Yeah, I was wrong.
But no, I don't mean it for that. But we missed that target a little bit. But they have come down slightly.
Yeah.
What is your prediction on that?
So I have said for a long time 5.5% from like the headline quoted average interest rate is that magic number.
And I agree with that.
And as of last Friday when I was writing my weekly market report, they were at 6.23, give or take.
Yep.
So we're about 75 basis points north of that. The Fed held rates steady for almost a year. They did decrease last month in September. There is another 2 rate cuts that are projected for later this year. And I think the important thing is that the Fed has stated that in their dual mandate of both managing inflation and managing employment, they're focused more now on protecting employment than protecting inflation, which means to me that they'll be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to rate cuts. Now, we all know that the Fed does not directly control interest rates. Interest rates are more correlated to investor demand and the 10-year treasury and things like that. So to me, what I think is more important than the actual interest rate is the buyer psychology around interest rates. If buyers believe that interest rates are trending lower, if they believe that we're in a rate cutting environment, then they're going to be predispositioned to be able to actually buy. And we've seen this true for the last 2 years, because we told buyers as advisors in August last year and this year that, hey, rates are lower now. You know, the Fed rate cut that we're expecting in September is going to be priced into the market. Like, now's your time to go and lock in. And 2 years in a row, rates hit their lowest level in that year the day before the Fed made their announcement, then increased. They've since come back a little bit. But that's the point. Buyer psychology arguably almost matters more than the actual rate.
That is so correct. It's true.
I love that. It's 100%.
But as an active agent, you know, how do you get that message across to that buyer?
One conversation at a time. I mean,
one conversation at a time.
One conversation at a time. Look, you got everybody's,
because it is more.
It is, and everybody's want or need is very different.
Right.
And I think every conversation is different. You got a family or so on and so forth, and you're looking for these things. You're looking for other amenities and so on and so forth. Every conversation is different. Yeah. So when someone comes in, someone gave me the analogy, you can't walk into a doctor's office and say, "What's wrong with me, doc? I have a headache." Well, we got to do blood work. Let me ask you some questions, so on and so forth. The same thing. So I do love that we're in this environment because it gives us the opportunity to be the professionals that we should be in what we do. Are we asking the right questions and so on and so forth? Is there an opportunity? Yes. If I would ask anybody, if I could buy any property in any area in the United States 10 years ago, would you have bought it? The answer hopefully is yes, because prices were lower, regardless of what the rate is if we go 10 years ago. So it's a matter of conversation. We've heard this 1,000 times, right? You marry the house and you date the rate, right? So the rate is important because it gets you in. And you got to have a financial conversation. Does it make sense for your kids? Is there affordability? Where are you today? But also, if this fits every need and you're within that pocket, what's it look like? You know, because the young guys are starting to make, hopefully, as we get older, we start making hopefully a little more money. So those you got to have a conversation overall, holistic.
Last question.
So I love what you said,
by
the way, Jared.
Last question before I ask each of you to sell me on your territories. What is the biggest misconception investors may have in each of the cities? I want to buy in Miami, but I want to really buy in New York City, but. What's the biggest misconception
for us
when somebody wants to come to South Florida?
For us, it's easy. And we've had this conversation. We are not a speculation. We've held steady. We're not just a city that's just a flyby that's going to happen and things are going to pop or whatever it is. From the Art Deco days in the '80s to to where we are today, Magic City is here to stay, and it is a safe investment. I think that's a big speculation that people come in and go, well, I'll park my money and then release it and so on and so forth. No, this is future money.
Mister?
Well, I know sometimes it feels like you're in a time warp here, but New York City has, remained to be a true investment, right? Even though we sort of rewound time and again, prices are where they were a decade ago. You buy here because of the enduring value. This is a blue chip city. This is a blue chip investment. It generally tracks steadily higher over time, and people will accept lower cap rates or cash on cash returns here because they expect it to be a more stable investment and have that sort of steady appreciation over the long term. Now, obviously, there's been a few different legislation things that have happened, between the Tenant Protection Act in 2019 and the FAIR Act now that have made it a little bit more laborious to be a landlord here, which has affected some demand. And I think there's a big difference from an investor standpoint if you're looking to buy a single condo unit that you can then rent out versus buying a multifamily of varying scales. General condo owners may accept a slightly lower cap rate. If you're buying a building, you're going to want a bit higher of a cap rate because it comes with a bit more risk and expense and things like that. So there's a different type of investor that's going to buy here versus other markets. There's also a significantly higher, price entry point to get into this market.
You, David. So I have some money. I'm thinking about moving to Florida. I'm thinking about maybe investing in New York. I can't really decide, right? But I'm not buying as an investor. I'm buying as someone who's going to live in whatever town I choose. I'm not ready to retire. I'm still working. I can probably do remotely, blah, blah, blah. I'm just creating this profile, okay? Sell me on why, and I'm thinking about New York. Sell me on why, in your opinion, I should move to South Florida instead.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you gave a little picture around it because that's really what it's dependent on. Depending on what you want and what you need, and then we'll fill those voids. Lower entry point, than in New York. That's a big one, right? Lifestyle is another one. So depending if you are interested in the outdoor lifestyle, in having an opportunity to have certain weather conditions, let's say for example on that, but more importantly the opportunity of possibly the investment going a little higher faster. So I always think about that financial market, right? You're the safe bet, which it's gonna have a higher entry point. Our entry point might be a little different, but it doesn't come with the risk that the speculation has. So there's always this constant conversation about a bubble. Your investment is safe in South Florida, and we've seen it, and allow me to show you. So regardless if you're an end user, you still want to make sure your money's safe and appreciating. So
Absolutely.
Let me show you these trends also, in addition to the lifestyle. The environment we started this conversation, is the environment is a big deal in South Florida.
People, buyers sometimes when I'm talking to them, especially first-time buyers, if I buy this, I'm kind of locked in and I don't really know. What if I don't like it? And I always say to the buyers all the time, this is not your forever home. This is not your final resting place.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, if you need to move, if you have a life change or job change, put it on the market and sell it. There's an agent who wants to do that.
Yeah.
But, to get past that mentality sometimes, oh my God, I don't know. Sell me on New York City.
Well,
Mister.
to be honest, I think New York City and South Florida are very similar and also incredibly different at the same time. And what I mean by that is a client's going to want one or the other generally, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to talk him into it, or you're going to have plenty of clients that want one of each, right? And that's a much easier conversation. I haven't come across many people that are saying, hey, I'm between these two cities, like, what do I do? As much as, you get it between like Manhattan or Brooklyn, or do I go to the suburbs, or do I do this? So I don't know that there's such a difference, but New York is going to continue to be this enduring appeal, this iconic city, this cultural destination. And hey,
Iconic.
in 20,
That
30,
hasn't come up
40
today.
years, it might not snow as much here. So, it is getting warmer. So
You're really pitching that one, huh?
yeah.
He got me on iconic. We haven't heard that word in the entire conversation. Okay, iconic.
But I do think that you will start to see sort of this trend back of people that have moved to South Florida. Maybe some of them are going to start missing that hustle and bustle, of the pace of life that comes here, and want to be able to have more roots being put back here. So,
All right, that's all we got. These two great executives right here at Brown Harris Stevens, Miami, New York City. Back in a moment with my final thoughts.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you hear a lot about how crucial it is to have the right partners in this industry. At Roadway, we don't just move your clients, we give them an experience they'll love. Specialized services to our white glove treatment, it's all about making sure your clients feel taken care of every step of the way. And if you're looking for a rewarding referral program, reach out to me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
All right, as we wrap up today's conversation on the Big Apple and the magic city of Miami, where is the smarter investment? Well, it's clear there's no simple right answer, just different opportunities shaped by lifestyle, timing, and goals. New York City remains a market defined by global prestige, resilience, and cultural depth, a city that always reinvents itself. Miami, on the other hand, continues to shine as the symbol of freedom, sunshine, and new wealth fueled by migration, tax benefits, and luxury lifestyle that's hard to resist. Whether you're drawn to the energy of New York City or the allure of the waterfront, smart investing starts with understanding your why. And you chasing long-term value, lifestyle, or both. Because in the end, the smartest investment is the one that aligns with your vision of how and where you want to live. And that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Substack, or TikTok at Vince Rocco. And Norman Vincent Peale says, shoot for the moon, everyone. Even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate and the More Network, to all of you all around the world, Thanks for spending a part of your day with us. I am grateful. Keep thinking the good thoughts, and I will see you next time